welcome to Open, everyone. I'm Rhina Valentin, your hosting Cafe con Leche for the next hour, encouraging you to get social with us online, especially during these social distancing times. You can tweet us and follow us on Instagram at BxRx TV and like us on Facebook at Open BxRx Television. And of course, you can always find me on Twitter, FB, Instagram, Insta Stories, and LinkedIn at Rhina Valentin. Love to hear from you. So, as COVID 19 continues to loom across the nation and tracking the virus seems to become the priority, there's a rent crisis in New York City. And while the rent moratorium prevents New Yorkers from being evicted, now more than ever, rent freeze is being advocated. And joining us to share more on both these issues, we welcome Manhattan Borough President Gale Brewer. Hi, Gale.
Hello, how are you? It's wonderful to be here, and I love Bronx Neck, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you for being here with us. And thank you for the work that you continue to do. I mean, you're always out there in the forefront, really making your voice heard, literally. And so I'd like to open up having this discussion regarding this suggestion that you've been making to both the mayor and the governor with tracking through the waste system.
Yeah. So the issue here is we have in Manhattan something called the Solid Waste Advisory Board. It's the 50 residents of Manhattan. It's charter mandated. And they literally think, thank goodness, pre-COVID and during COVID and after COVID, what is the way in which Manhattan can be more environmentally safe and healthy? And we all know right now that's more important than ever. So one of the suggestions, which actually came from around the world, is we don't know where COVID came from. Every time I pick up the newspaper, it's, this in China, this travel, you don't really know. Is it an animal? Is it a person? And nobody really knows. So One of the suggestions has been from other countries is our wastewater. Obviously, we have sewage treatment plants. Sometimes the sewage goes into the waterways because there's an overflow. So we are asking the mayor and the governor, the obviously Department of Environmental Conservation runs our wastewater treatment plant. So we're asking that they look at this because other countries are thinking that's a place to look for this god-awful virus. We don't know. So we're waiting to see. But I would say the environmental issues in general are incredibly important. We're also concerned about recycling of organics. It's a cut in this year's budget. We know the budget is in bad shape, as you know, but we want to make sure that those who have already started to get the organics out of the sanitation and all of the piles that go into the normal sanitation route, it can go to our community gardens. It goes to healthy places. So we're trying to think of how not to get rid of that particular project and to have it continue to be collected. So these are just some of the issues that came out of SWAB. Of course, there are many, many more. As we reopen, how can we be healthier?
Right. And I'm so glad that you're still pressing on that issue, because at the end of the day, this whole experience it seems to almost feel as if though Mother Earth is really calling upon us to be a lot more mindful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I know you're all about the eco-friendly approach into our way of living. I mean, considering it's Manhattan, I mean, there's a lot of things that are kind of unavoidable, but there's nothing wrong with at least making an attempt to be conscious of it.
Yeah, there was an article in the paper today about the issue of trucks and cars, because obviously if you look at the maps, you see less pollution. And that's because we're not driving, because we're not coming to work, and there's no commerce here. Interestingly enough, according to the press reports, it's the trucks that are the biggest challenge. The cars bring down the pollution rate a bit, but I know in the Bronx and Manhattan, because the trucks just deliver all over the place.
Right.
So I think we need to look very, very seriously, given the asthma and the other underlying conditions that we're all now much more concerned about, and look at the trucks and what they are spewing into our atmosphere. So these are things we've learned the hard way.
Right.
But we've always known that trucks are a problem, but we now know that they really need to be addressed.
Yeah, good. It's good in the sense that now the car industries are going to really have to figure out how to innovate that hybrid and electric car system that is kind of like in its beginning stages. But since you mentioned commerce, I wanted to have a conversation about the rent freeze aspect of this whole thing, because I mean, yes, everybody is aware that there's a moratorium in place, and yes, while people cannot be evicted in this present moment, I understand that there are landlords that are waiting for the moratorium to be lifted so that they can start their processing.
I mean, we do get calls about that. The issue is it's very frightening because hundreds, thousands of people have lost their jobs. You only have to look at how many people are applying for unemployment insurance to know how many thousands and thousands of New Yorkers and Americans have lost their jobs. So the moratorium on evictions goes until August 20th. But that doesn't mean anything in the sense that you're still going to have to pay the rent after that. So it's nice to have an eviction moratorium, but what happens on September 1st? And so we're here to say that between the federal government, where the House, not the Senate yet, has passed money for renters and for mortgages, the state legislature is considering the same. It could be a moratorium or it could be money for renters and people who have mortgages. We're also concerned about small landlords because we know that if the tenants don't pay, then they're not going to be able to pay their bank. So this is a very vicious circle, and we want to make sure that Manhattan or the Bronx on September 1st, there aren't hundreds of thousands of people in housing court. I've been there with tenants over the years. We do not want that. So we are very, very focused on what is the way in which state legislature, federal funding, local one-shots, etc. People need to stay in their homes. We don't need any more homeless.
Right.
And we know that 40% of the people for the last month couldn't pay their rent. Thank goodness there's a moratorium on evictions. This is a very serious problem. And it exists for small stores. It exists for small businesses. They too need to come back. So we have a really big challenge here that has to be addressed. And I appreciate you asking that question.
Well, it's only going to get worse as time continues passing by, and we're still on this pause, and we're still, at operating on a limited basis. So right now, for anyone who may be watching and is concerned about what steps they should take, do you have any suggestions?
Yes, I do. I mean, we are working. We're also concerned about undocumented because we know that in some cases they can't get some of these services. Yes, the answer is you need to have access to the many, many legal services that exist. Certainly our office, 212-669-8191 is actually my direct, or G. Brewer at manhattanbp.nyc.gov. We can put you in touch with legal services in your area. And to the credit of the mayor and the city council, many, many of them are funded just for this purpose. So there is a way, but you must have an attorney at your side. And for the commercials, we suggest, because I'm very concerned about small stores and mom and pops, we suggest that you talk to your owner and see if you can renegotiate something so you pay over time. I've also suggested for residents, and it's been picked up by others, that you put down a security if you did. So maybe that security could be used instead of paying the rent. Pay it now, use the security, and then that's a way of helping for your rent so you don't have to pay as much. This is a real challenge, and every aspect, every opportunity for government to intervene, to be supportive, has to be there because we cannot have more homeless.
I agree. And the other aspect to this is that, well, New York is built on small businesses, and that applies to small businesses as well. So thank you. Thank you for all of that wonderful advice that you provided. I mean, at this point, it sounds to me like everybody needs to start establishing relationships with attorneys. That's what it sounds like.
Well, I think that's a way to begin, only because we have in the city of New York, thank goodness, a wonderful group of legal aid and legal services attorneys who are there to be supportive. And they have been all through this pandemic, and they will continue. And many of them want to do this job. That's why they're doing legal services.
Thank you. And thank you for making sure that people are aware that this service is offered for free through the legal aid services.
Yep.
All right, you guys, once again, thank you, Honorable Manhattan Borough President Gale Brewer. For more updates on the Borough of Manhattan via Manhattan Borough President Gale Brewer, you can visit her at manhattanbp.nyc.gov, and you can also follow her on Twitter, which is at Gale A. Brewer. Okay, so we have to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll get some healthy eating advice to shave off those quarantine pounds. Don't go anywhere.